The waiter was the one who laughed first. I remember that part. He thought it was a proposal. I don't blame him. The way I knelt beside her booth, opened the small velvet box, and held the ring up like some sad, misplaced gesture of love. It did look like a proposal, but what made it grotesque was what followed. She didn't look at me, not even for a second. She kept her eyes on the man sitting across from her. The one whose thumb had been slowly stroking the inside of her palm before I walked in. The one whose plate still had steam rising from it. The one who looked at me like I was a parking ticket. "You dropped something," I said. My voice cracked on the last word, embarrassingly so. Cleared my throat and tried again. "This used to be yours." I offered her the ring we'd exchanged 9 years ago. It glinted under the diner's yellow lights, catching on the edge of her gaze. But she didn't flinch, didn't move, not even a twitch of recognition. The waiter stopped laughing. The air shifted. I heard someone's fork clatter onto a plate a few tables away. And she finally turned to me and said, "You shouldn't be here." That was it. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "This isn't what it looks like." Not even, "Please." Just that. "You shouldn't be here." I didn't reply. I simply placed the ring on the table beside her mimosa and walked out. My knees were shaking, my hands were numb, and my chest felt like it was full of crushed drywall. I made it 10 feet from the door before I sat down on the curb outside the diner and tried to remember how to breathe. You know what's funny? I rehearsed this in my head dozens of times. Not this exact scene, but something like it. I imagined catching her, confronting her, walking away with dignity and silence like in the movies. But nobody tells you what it feels like to hear your wife whisper a joke to another man after you've just given her back the ring you worked overtime to afford. Nobody prepares you for the part where he laughs and she joins in, right in front of you. That's when it happened. That's when I knew I wasn't going to recover from this the way people do in advice columns. I wasn't going to move on and find peace. I wasn't going to take time to heal. I was going to unravel piece by piece, quietly, pathetically. And it started later that same night when my phone buzzed with a message that said, "You saw what you weren't supposed to. Don't show up again." Not from her, from him. And what followed that message would rewrite everything I thought I knew about Natalie, myself, and even my own brother. I must have read that message 100 times. You saw what you weren't supposed to. Don't show up again. No name, no emojis, no context, just that. It came at 11:42 p.m. the same night I gave Natalie her ring back, while I was still sitting in my truck, engine off, outside my childhood elementary school of all places. I don't know why I drove there. Maybe it was subconscious, some forgotten corner of my brain reaching for comfort, familiarity, innocence, none of which I felt anymore. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Should I respond? Should I ignore it? Should I drive back to that diner and confront them both? Demand answers, demand dignity, demand something. But I didn't. Instead, I opened our shared Google account. Call it a desperate impulse. I wasn't expecting to find anything. Honestly, Natalie was careful. Always had been. Private folders, locked notes. She once changed the Netflix password and said it was because of a regional glitch, but this time she had slipped. There it was, a synced calendar entry. Friday, Columbia House. Confirm with Jack. Jack. That name hit me like a slap. Not because I didn't recognize it, but because I did. Jack wasn't just some guy. It was my older brother, my half-brother technically, from my dad's first marriage. He and I were never particularly close, but he was the kind of man people noticed. A real estate broker, charismatic, clean suits, flashy smile, twice divorced, always dating. We saw him on holidays, sometimes at barbecues. Natalie used to say he was intense but charming. Apparently, he was also sleeping with my wife. And suddenly, everything clicked. The knowing glances I ignored at Christmas. The time Natalie insisted Jack help her find a great tax person. The private texts I'd accidentally glimpsed once and been too scared to question. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. All this time, I thought I'd been too boring, too soft, too fragile. And maybe I was. But this wasn't just cheating. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a long-running, carefully protected secret built behind my back by the two people I thought would never cross me at the same time. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I sat there, phone clenched in my hand, quietly unraveling, like always. That's when I noticed something else. The Columbia House calendar entry wasn't for dinner or drinks. It was tagged as Storage Unit Number 6. What the hell were they doing at a storage unit? A minute later, another message buzzed onto my screen, this time from Natalie. Please don't make this uglier than it has to be. I'll call you when I can think clearly. Just don't do anything stupid. Stupid. That word looped in my head until it felt like a curse. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I just kept driving in circles, my brain spiraling in directions I couldn't control. Was this recent? Was it going on for months, years? Did anyone else know? My mom, my friends. Had I been a village idiot this entire time, smiling through barbecues while my wife and brother played house behind my back? And then a terrible idea planted itself in my head and refused to leave. What if I went to that storage unit? What if I saw for myself what they'd hidden? Because if I was already shattered, what more damage could knowing the full truth really do? But I was wrong. The damage wasn't done yet. And what I found inside storage unit number 6 the next morning wasn't just devastating. It was unforgivable. I didn't plan to go there. I told myself I was just going to drive by, just to see if their car was parked outside. Maybe I thought that if I saw it with my own eyes, it would kill the last bit of denial that was still clawing at my chest. But denial has a funny way of disguising itself as curiosity. And curiosity, when you're broken and betrayed, becomes obsession. The storage facility was one of those off-the-highway places. Long rows of corrugated metal units with numbers sprayed on the doors in fading black paint. A keypad at the gate, a rusted sign that said, "Secure, affordable, private." The irony wasn't lost on me. It was around 10 a.m. when I got there. The place was mostly empty. A man in a golf hat 2 rows down was unloading boxes from a van. He didn't even glance at me. That made it easier. I parked, got out, and walked straight to Unit 6. I didn't have a key, obviously, and I wasn't even sure I'd see anything. But when I got closer, I noticed something strange. The lock wasn't fully latched. It looked closed from a distance, but up close, it was clear someone had carelessly pushed it shut without snapping it into place. I hesitated. This was the moment where a smarter man would have turned around, gone home, called a friend, taken a breath. But I wasn't smart that day. I was something else. Something between numb and furious. I lifted the latch, pulled up the door, and felt my stomach drop. Inside was a couch, a familiar couch. It was the one from our guest room 2 years ago. The one Natalie had insisted we donate because it didn't match the new energy of the house. I remembered hauling it to the curb myself, sweating through my shirt. Next to the couch was a floor lamp we'd lost in a move, a wine rack, a stereo, a stack of framed photos turned face down, and a mattress wrapped in clear plastic with 2 pillows stacked neatly on top. It looked like someone had been creating a backup life. Not just storing junk, not just hiding old furniture, creating a place to be together. There was also a small side table, and sitting on top of it was a cheap spiral notebook, the kind you get from a grocery store. The edges were frayed, the front cover bent from use, and against every reasonable instinct I had left, I opened it. Inside were lists, dates, notes, Natalie's handwriting, and Jack's. I recognized both. Groceries, wine, protein bars, ibuprofen, extra sheets. Check-in with storage payment. Friday night, 8:30 to 11 o'clock. Take back roads. Leave lights off. Park 2 blocks away. Every single page bled with coordination, a hidden map, a shadow calendar running beneath the life I thought I was living. And then I saw the page that broke me completely. It wasn't a plan. It was a list titled, "What He'll Never Know." I can't write everything it said. I genuinely don't think I could handle seeing it again in words. But there were bullet points, each one like a knife between the ribs. Mexico 2019. He thought it was altitude sickness. Valentine's dinner. Took a call in the bathroom to check emails. His mom's birthday right after we left. Christmas photo. Still had Jack's shirt in my bag. He doesn't even realize I changed the bank password. I closed the notebook. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I put it back exactly where I found it, lowered the garage-style door until it clicked shut, and stumbled back to my car like a drunk man. The air felt thinner than usual. My skin buzzed with something that felt like shame and rage fused into one. She hadn't just cheated. She'd laughed with him, eaten with him, slept in my house, touched my things, and then built a secret apartment made of our discarded life. And worst of all, she wrote it down like it was poetry, like it was a game. I sat in my car, pulled out my phone, and did the first thing that came to mind. I called Jack. He answered on the second ring with a casual, "Hey man, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you back?" I didn't speak for 2 full seconds. Then I said, "I just came from your little hideaway." The silence that followed was so pure, it was almost a relief. He didn't ask, "What are you talking about?" He didn't deny it. He didn't panic. All he said, in a voice colder than I've ever heard, was, "So now you know." And then he hung up. I stared at the screen. No callback, no message, nothing. But he was wrong. I didn't know. Not yet. Because less than 48 hours later, a lawyer would contact me. And that's when I'd learned this betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was financial and criminal. I didn't move for hours after that call ended. Just sat there in the driver's seat, staring through the windshield like the answers might eventually reveal themselves in the fog of my own breath on the glass. I kept thinking, "So now you know." That phrase, that cold, final sentence, like he was doing me a favor by not lying anymore. When you realize someone's been actively erasing you from your own life, repurposing your routines, hiding pieces of your identity in storage lockers, laughing about the lies they told while you were cooking dinner, something in your chest shifts. It's not rage. It's worse than rage. It's nothingness. And once that sets in, you're capable of anything. But I didn't do anything drastic. Not yet. I just drove home. When I got there, the house was dark. Natalie wasn't there. I didn't know where she was. And for the first time since we got married, I didn't care. I stepped inside, turned off my phone, walked into the guest bedroom, the one where the couch used to be before it ended up in that love nest of theirs, and I lay down on the floor. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, trying to remember what our wedding vows sounded like. Couldn't. Not a single word. My memory had already started to erase the parts of her I used to treasure. The next morning, the knock came at 9:06 a.m. I was still on the floor. I thought maybe it was Natalie. Maybe she was coming to explain or beg or lie again. But it wasn't her. It was a man in a charcoal suit. "Corbin Reed," he said, my name in a tone that was too polite to be casual. He handed me a sealed envelope and nodded once before walking back down the front steps. I opened it in the hallway. Inside was a legal notice. I was being summoned for a deposition related to a pending civil matter involving marital assets and third-party liability. I had no idea what that meant. I called the number listed at the bottom and asked. The woman on the phone, her voice distant and mechanical, told me the following. There was an ongoing investigation into financial misappropriation connected to Natalie's marketing firm, and my name was on several documents that placed me as an uninformed cosigner. Apparently, Natalie had been funneling consulting income into private accounts listed in both our names, accounts I didn't even know existed. I laughed. For the first time in 2 days, I actually laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, but because it was perfect. While I was crying over her late nights and Googling how to fix a distant marriage, she was using my name to set up getaway money. It got worse. The firm, her employer, had been quietly reviewing her expense reports for months. Something flagged in the system. A few of those spa retreats and client meetings weren't properly documented. They weren't asking me to testify against her yet, but they were asking for access to our joint tax returns, statements, travel records, and anything that could prove I had no idea what was going on. The implication was clear. If I didn't help them, they could help her pin it on me. I didn't call her. I didn't text Jack. I sat in the living room and stared at the walls of a house that suddenly felt rented from a life I was never really part of. I didn't eat, didn't shower. I just started collecting everything I could. Receipts, emails, passwords. I called my bank. I requested every document going back 5 years. I started highlighting things, making copies, building folders. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about heartbreak. It was about survival. 3 days later, I got a second envelope. This time, it was from Natalie. Inside was a letter. No apology, no explanation, just a list. It was written in her handwriting and it was titled, "Things to Let Go Of." She listed items. My flannel jacket, the ceramic dish we bought in Maine, my vinyl collection, our wedding album. And at the bottom, underlined twice, resentment. It's a waste of time. I don't remember finishing the letter. All I know is I stood up, grabbed the velvet ring box still sitting on the counter, and put it in my jacket. That night, I found out where they'd be. Jack was hosting a cocktail event downtown, something with clients, networking. Natalie would be there, of course, supporting him, laughing in some dress she probably bought with my signature on a shared card. And that's where I decided it would happen. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want drama. I just wanted to give her something back. One last thing she forgot she ever stole, her ring. But I wouldn't hand it to her quietly this time. Not at a booth, not at brunch. I was going to give it to her in front of everyone. And this time, I wouldn't be the only one walking away in silence. I almost didn't go. I stood outside the building for over 20 minutes, watching people walk through the revolving doors in their neatly pressed suits and plastic smiles. I hadn't shaved. I hadn't slept more than a couple of hours in days. My blazer was one I hadn't worn since my grandfather's funeral. But I was there, ring in my pocket, no script in my head, just that familiar nausea sitting like a boulder behind my ribs. The event was being hosted in the mezzanine of one of those downtown office buildings with too much glass and not enough soul. A security guard gave me a badge when I said I was with the Weston Group, Jack's real estate firm. No one questioned me. I guess heartbreak gives you a kind of invisible cloak. No one really looks at a man who's barely holding it together. I stepped off the elevator into a room filled with champagne flutes, elevator jazz, and a soft hum of people pretending to enjoy each other. Spotlights from the ceiling bounced off silver trays and expensive watches. It was the kind of place I used to feel too plain for. Tonight, I didn't care. I saw them instantly. Jack stood near the back, a glass in hand, talking to 3 men in suits I vaguely recognized from LinkedIn. His tie was blood red, bold as ever. Natalie stood next to him, wearing a navy dress I'd never seen before, low-cut, backless. Her hair was curled, glossy, perfect. She looked radiant, rehearsed. I didn't walk up right away. I hovered close enough to listen, far enough not to be seen. Jack was talking about a new property deal, something near the coast. Laughing, charming. Meanwhile, Natalie was scanning the room like she was waiting for someone to notice her, or trying to make sure someone wouldn't. And then her eyes landed on me. I watched her blink twice, processing that I was actually standing there. Her smile dropped. Not fully, just a subtle flicker like a candle trying not to go out. She didn't move. Jack kept talking, oblivious. I walked up slowly, not fast, not angry, just present. As I reached the group, Jack looked over and his entire posture changed. His shoulders tightened, his jaw locked. One of the men next to him raised an eyebrow, clearly confused. "Evening," I said. "Calm, too calm." Jack gave me a look that said, "Don't do this here." Natalie didn't say a word. She just stared at me, arms folded across her stomach like she thought that might protect her. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the velvet box. The moment I did, a few nearby conversations dipped in volume. That's how these events work. People tune in the second something feels off. I opened the box, held it up toward Natalie, and said, "You left something." She didn't reach for it. She just blinked again. One of Jack's colleagues chuckled nervously, clearly mistaking this for a twisted proposal. But I wasn't finished. "This ring," I said louder this time, "was cleaned, resized, and meant to be returned to you at breakfast last week. But now I realize it doesn't belong on your hand anymore. It belongs in a case file." Jack stepped forward, lowering his voice. "Corbin, don't do this." "No," I cut him off. You already did this, both of you. I turned to the group of men standing nearby. Quick question. How many of you invest with Jack here? They exchanged looks. Good. Then maybe you should know your money is being managed by a man who's been building real estate portfolios with assets he didn't fully disclose. One's funded, in part, by identity fraud through me. Natalie's face turned paper white. Jack's smile cracked for the first time since I'd arrived. You should also ask him about Storage Unit 6, I added, and the dual signature authorization he somehow convinced a married woman to use without her husband's knowledge. More eyes were on us now. Phones were being subtly raised. People love a scandal, especially when it wears a suit. I placed the ring box on a nearby tray of hors d'oeuvres, looked Natalie in the eye, and whispered, You wanted me to let go of resentment. I think this counts. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because the sound that followed, a glass falling, someone shouting Jack's name, and Natalie calling after me, not with regret, but desperation, was enough. But the fallout wasn't just emotional. What I said that night was legal, and the next time I'd see Natalie, it wouldn't be in a cocktail dress. It would be in a chair across from me in mediation. I wish I could say the satisfaction of what I did at the event lasted longer, that I walked away feeling powerful, vindicated, proud of myself for standing up in public after being humiliated in private for so long. But the truth is, by the time I got back to my car, my hands were shaking again, and my chest felt like it was about to cave in. It wasn't a triumph. It was grief just dressed up in louder clothes. The fallout came fast. 2 days later, I got a call from a mediation office downtown. Natalie had filed for a formal separation, not divorce. Separation. Like that word somehow softened everything she'd already shattered. The woman on the phone spoke like she was reading off a cue card. Cordial, efficient, completely detached. She scheduled the first session for Friday morning. It was held in a small, windowless room. Beige walls, round table, water cooler in the corner. There were no raised voices, no sobbing, no last-minute confessions, just me, Natalie, a mediator with thick glasses and a clipboard, and an uncomfortable silence that felt like it could suffocate all three of us if it sat long enough. Natalie wore gray, not the gray she used to wear to funerals or meetings, a softer shade like she was trying to look neutral. Her hair was tied back. No makeup, no jewelry, not even the fake sincerity she used to wear like a necklace. I, on the other hand, looked like hell. I hadn't shaved. My shirt was wrinkled. I had circles under my eyes so dark they looked like bruises. The mediator cleared her throat and asked if either of us would like to speak first. Natalie did. She started with a speech, something rehearsed, full of phrases like emotional distance and growing apart, and never intended to hurt anyone. I sat there nodding like a polite hostage, letting her dig her own grave one softened syllable at a time. And then the mediator turned to me and asked, Corbin, is there anything you'd like to add before we begin reviewing the terms? I pulled out a folder. It wasn't thick, just enough to hold a handful of statements, receipts, and that printed page from the storage unit. The one titled, What He'll Never Know. I didn't say a word. I slid the folder across the table. Natalie didn't reach for it right away. Her eyes flicked toward it, then back to the mediator, as if hoping someone would step in and stop time. The mediator opened it, flipped through silently. Her brows lifted slightly at a few points, but she didn't comment. Then she said something I'll never forget. Given the evidence of deliberate concealment, this may alter the negotiation. I'll need to pause this session to consult with legal. Natalie blinked like she didn't understand the words. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time since this all began. There was fear in her eyes. Not panic, not guilt. Fear. And just like that, the cracks started showing. She leaned forward slightly and whispered, I didn't mean for you to find that list. I nodded once. But you still wrote it. She looked down. Her hands were folded so tightly, her knuckles had gone white. The mediator excused herself. He told me, Natalie said it softly, like she was talking to herself, like I wasn't even there. I thought Jack would protect me. I turned toward her slowly. From what? She glanced up, eyes red but dry. From this. From you. From the blowback. He told me you'd fold. That you were too soft to fight back. That broke me more than anything else she had done. Not the affair, not the storage unit, not even the financial betrayal. But the way she said it, like believing I was weak, made it easier for her to do everything she did. She didn't love Jack. She used him because he made her feel powerful. And she stayed with me because I made her feel safe until I stopped being silent, until I brought the receipts, until I made the room go quiet. I stood up slowly. The mediator still hadn't returned. I looked down at her one last time. You told me resentment was a waste of time, I said. But I think you confused resentment with memory. I'm not bitter, Natalie. I'm just not blind anymore. I walked out. Didn't wait for the mediator. Didn't say goodbye. I left that room and felt something lift from my shoulders. Not relief, not yet, but air. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe without it tasting like poison. That night, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. It wasn't from Natalie. It was from someone else, a woman, and what she told me in that message turned everything I thought I knew about Jack and Natalie upside down. At first, I let the voicemail sit. I didn't recognize the number. And after everything I'd just been through, the legal threats, the manipulation, the public spectacle, I wasn't in the mood for another curveball. But something about the voice in the message preview gave me pause. Not Natalie, not her mother, not Jack's assistant who texted me once pretending to be someone else. No, this voice was unfamiliar and calm. I finally hit play. Mr. Reed, I hope I'm not crossing a line by reaching out. I don't want anything from you, but I believe you need to hear what I have to say. My name is Marianne. I'm Jack's ex-wife. The second one, the one no one talks about. What you're going through, I've lived it. I know the way they operate. If you want answers, meet me tomorrow. Noon. Corner of Park and Grove. No pressure. But you won't find peace until you hear the full story. I played the message again and again. Jack's ex-wife. The second one. Jack never talked about her to anyone. The first wife, sure, she came up occasionally, always in stories where Jack played the victim. She drained me financially, he used to say. Worst mistake of my life. But a second wife? That was news. And she wasn't just offering sympathy. She was offering something more dangerous. The truth. The next day, I showed up early. It was a park bench across from a little flower shop, the kind of place you wouldn't think twice about unless you had a reason to look. I was 5 minutes early, trying not to look like I was watching every face that passed by. When she arrived, she looked exactly like someone who'd survived Jack Weston. Elegant but tired. Clean lines in her clothes, but shadows under her eyes that looked permanent. She introduced herself without a handshake, just a nod, and sat down beside me without waiting to be invited. I'm not here to get involved in your divorce, she said. But you need to understand, this isn't just about Natalie or even you. It's about a pattern. I didn't speak. I just listened. He finds women who are tired. Tired of being invisible. Tired of their soft husbands. Tired of predictability. And then he becomes the answer, the excitement, the what if. But what he really wants is access. Financial, emotional, legal. My heart started racing, but I kept my face still. He convinced me to open an investment account in both our names, she continued. Told me we'd retire early, flip houses. He drained it in 6 months. When I pushed back, he threatened to expose things I'd shared in confidence. Made me look unstable. He even had one of his friends pretend to be a therapist and claim I was reactive. I lost everything. The apartment, the business, even my credit score. And the worst part? She paused, then looked me straight in the eye. Your wife helped him do it to me, too. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. I didn't know her well, she said, but I recognized the handwriting on some documents. I saw her name on correspondence when I requested my financial records through a lawyer. Natalie wasn't just sleeping with him, Corbin. She was co-signing the scheme. Probably thought she was in love, or worse, thought they'd replace you and live off the profits. I couldn't move. My fingers were curled in a fist in my lap, knuckles going white. Did they do it to you? she asked quietly. I nodded once. They will again, she said. And the next person won't have a folder full of proof. You got lucky, in a twisted way. We sat in silence for a few minutes. I could feel something unraveling inside me. All the pieces that hadn't quite fit before. The sudden trips, the odd financial discrepancies, the way Jack always acted like he was above risk. They all snapped into place. This wasn't some emotional affair that spun out of control. This was targeted, strategic, and I was their latest mark. I looked at her. Why now? Why reach out to me? She offered the saddest smile I've ever seen. Because I saw your face in that video clip, the one from the cocktail event. Someone posted it online. I recognized the ring box. I recognized me from years ago, and I remembered what it felt like to still think there was something left to salvage. She handed me a USB drive. Everything I saved. Emails, bank records, screenshots. Maybe your lawyer can use it, or maybe you just burn it. Either way, you deserve the full picture. She stood and walked away before I could say anything. I stayed on that bench long after she disappeared into the street crowd. Just sat there gripping the flash drive like it was a live wire. When I finally went home, I plugged it into my laptop. The files inside made me sick. There were familiar names, transactions that mirrored mine, digital paper trails that led to shell accounts, fake consulting invoices, and in one email, Natalie's name, full name, linked to an offshore transfer. The final page was a draft of a prenup from Jack's third engagement. One that never went through. It listed a clause. Partner agrees to disclose all outside financial partnerships prior to marriage. The woman never signed it. Smart. I closed the laptop and stared at the wall until the sun went down. I knew what I had to do now. The only question left was whether I'd go quietly or if I'd bring down the house with them. And the answer came in the form of a manila envelope that arrived the next morning from Natalie's lawyer. Inside wasn't a countersuit. It was a confession, but not the kind I expected. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Felt heavier than it should have. Not physically, emotionally, like it held something final, something that might change the ending to this disaster story I never volunteered to be in. My name was typed neatly across the front. The return address was marked from a boutique law firm I vaguely remembered from one of Jack's holiday parties. The same firm that once helped him clean up his first divorce. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter, handwritten, from Natalie. Not her lawyer. Not a cold, formal document stamped with dates and clauses. Just her. And from the first sentence, I knew something had shifted. Corbin, I know I have no right to expect anything from you. Not grace, not forgiveness, not even attention. But this isn't about saving face. It's not about excuses. It's just about giving you what I never gave you in person. The truth. She went on to admit everything. The affair, the storage unit, the financial accounts, even the things I hadn't yet discovered. She detailed how Jack manipulated her, yes, but she didn't shift the blame. She admitted she let it happen. She admitted she liked the thrill of it, the sense of power, the illusion of control. And she wrote something that stopped me cold. It wasn't about love, Corbin. I don't even think I knew what love meant. Not until I saw what it looks like when someone walks away with dignity. I thought you were weak, but you were the strongest person in the room the night you returned the ring. I was too small to understand it then. I understand now. She enclosed a check not to buy me off. That wasn't even possible anymore. It was the remaining balance from one of the secret accounts. She'd signed it over to me, along with a notarized statement relinquishing any claim to our shared assets, the house, or my retirement fund. No mediation, no fighting, no drawn-out court dates. It was over, but this time on my terms. I folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and sat for a long time in the silence of my kitchen. The same place where I once practiced anniversary speeches and made her breakfast in bed while she texted him behind my back. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger or grief. I felt free. In the months that followed, I sold the house, left the city, cut ties. I didn't make a dramatic exit, no social media posts, no phone calls. I just quietly disappeared from the life that never really belonged to me. I moved to a smaller town upstate, rented a studio above a used bookstore, took a job archiving historical maps at a local college. It doesn't pay much, but I sleep. I walk by the river in the mornings. I make terrible coffee and drink it anyway. And slowly, not all at once, but little by little, I started remembering who I was before I spent years trying to be someone else's idea of enough. A few weeks ago, the bookstore owner downstairs, a woman named Lillian, invited me to a poetry reading. I almost didn't go, but I did. She read something about starting over that nearly broke me in the best way. Afterward, we talked about everything but the past. And when she asked if I believed in second chances, I said yes. Not because I want Natalie back, but because for the first time in a very long time, I finally gave one to myself.